So, on the question of what Biden will do, Jeremy Scahill, we don't know exactly. We know that Blinken has given a not great answer. Here's his not great answer.
We're speaking of the principle of self-defense.
I'm asking if you think that the principle of self-defense applies to the retaliatory, the airstrikes that they're conducting in response.
Matt, this is a very fluid situation. I would hesitate to comment on operations beyond, the rocket fire that is clearly targeting innocent civilians in Israel. So I would hesitate to speak to specific operations that have just occurred. But the broader principle of self-defense is something we stand by on behalf of Israel and every other country.
Do you think that an Israeli military response to the rockets coming in, a military response to the rockets coming in is covered by this broader rubric of self-defense, right?
Self-defense often does authorize the use of force.
Thank you, Matt. I want to ask you about East Jerusalem, but let's talk about what you said about the principle of self-defense. Does that in any way apply to the Palestinians? Do they have a right to self-defense? Do Palestinians have a right to self-defense?
In broadly speaking, Saeed, we believe in the concept of self-defense. We believe it applies to any state. I don't think that. I certainly wouldn't want my words to be construed as.
I understand. I want to ask you on Israel. I don't want to harp on this either, but the Israelis killed 13 people just now, including maybe 5 or 6 children. Do you condemn that? Do you condemn the killing of children?
Saeed,
I'm asking, do you condemn the killing of Palestinian children?
Obviously, and these reports are just emerging, and I understand, I was just speaking to the team, I understand we don't have independent confirmation of facts on the ground yet, so I'm very hesitant to get into reports that are just emerging. Obviously, the deaths of civilians, be they Israeli or Palestinians, are something we would take very seriously.
Okay.
You're going to know as soon as I read what your answer was that there's a big problem with it. You said, well, not a problem, it just doesn't answer the question. We believe that it, meaning the right to self-defense, applies to any state. Well, you see the problem, right? Yes?
Do you want to?
Do you regard Palestine as a state?
I wasn't referring.
Do you think that? Do you? You don't in the context of the ICC and the UN. So, are you saying that you do not? If it applies to any state, are you saying that Palestinians don't have a right to self-defense?
I was making a broader point, not attached to Israel or the Palestinians in that case.
So, they do have a right to self-defense.
Matt, I'm not in a position to debate the legalities from up here. What our message is one of de-escalation.
Oh my goodness. So that is courtesy of at the National News. How can that guy just stand there? He's unable to say anything really, because he doesn't seem to know what he's allowed to say. He doesn't seem to know what his handlers will allow him to say. The question of, do you regard Palestine as as a state? Basically, do you regard Palestine as its own entity or as its own thing worthy of considering, or should it just be taken over completely and not considered at all? Is essentially what that was drilling down to. He was all over the place. He couldn't really answer. It's just baffling. And then when it came to the airstrikes and the reports that children were dying, and by the way, many more have died, or several more have died since then, he deflected to, that's unconfirmed. He's unwilling to say what Israel's doing is wrong and bad, and we don't support it. This spokesman. So he says the questions from reporters here are solid, and the answers from the State Department's spokesperson are unfortunately not shocking. This is a bipartisan horror, and Joe Biden has a very long history of defending Israel's gratuitous violence and killings. No one should pretend the U.S. is some neutral party in what Israel is doing right now. Throughout his career, Biden has repeatedly supported Israel when it kills women and children. Ex-Israeli Prime Minister and war criminal Menachem Begin once said, "Biden was too extreme even for him on this." In 2001, the Bush administration issued a rare criticism of Israel's targeted killings. Biden rebuked Bush. "My view has always been that disagreements between Israel and the United States, those differences should be aired privately, not publicly," Biden said. So here from The Intercept is what he is talking about. So I'm not going to go over this, but you can certainly check it out. In 2006, Israel was bombing both Gaza and southern Lebanon, with Joe Biden cheering Israel on. The Israelis, Biden said on MSNBC, have in both cases, both in Gaza and southern Lebanon, done the right thing. Look at this insane statement Biden made. Biden said his only criticism of the Israelis is they're not that great at public relations. He compared Israel's attacks on Gaza and Lebanon to the U.S. invasion and occupation of Afghanistan after the September 11th attacks. It's a little bit like the same thing we had when we went into Afghanistan, Biden said at a press conference in July 2006. We went into Afghanistan, remember? We took out a wedding party by accident. Remember? We took out with these very sophisticated missiles we had. We accidentally killed some citizens. Was ever a war more justified than us going into Afghanistan? I can't think of any war since World War II more justified. Yet innocents got killed in us trying to protect America's interests. What a freaking ghoul! You tell me that Joe Biden is this nice grandpa, uncle guy, oh, Uncle Joe with my weird stories about Amtrak and, oh, I'm just a jolly nice guy. No, that's a psychotic thing to say. Just absolutely psychotic. And that is who our president is right now. And because he's Joe Biden, he's going to get a pass, no matter what he does or says. And the United States regards Israel as an incredibly close ally. We give Israel billions and billions of dollars every year. And a lot of it isn't even included in the official totals. It's more than people think. It's stunning. It's absolutely stunning. In 2010, as vice president, Joe Biden defended Israel's deadly assault on a humanitarian flotilla to Gaza. The raid killed 9 people, including 1 United States citizen. A UN investigation found 6 deaths were consistent with an extra-legal, arbitrary, and summary execution. So definitely check out Jeremy Scahill's thread there.